Hi everyone, I'm Leanne and today I'm going to be doing the mid-year freakout tag. Of course, the mid-year book freakout tag has become a bit of a staple on BookTube over the years. It is like the official marker of the halfway point in the year to reflect on the first 6 months of our reading. Now, there have been slight variations to this tag over the years. I don't know exactly what version I'm doing. I think I may be doing the original, but I'm not sure. You may have already seen that I did a rundown of my top 10 reads of the year so far, and I have a video diving into my stats for the first 6 months of the year on the way. And I think this tag is a nice bridge between the two of them. So let's get into the questions. So the first question is simply, what is the best book you've read so far this year? And if you have seen my video where I spoke about the top 10 reads for the year so far, you will know that it was Thirst Trap by Grania O'Hare. I'm not going to go into full plot synopsis of this one because I did speak about it in that recent video, but I think very top line for why this book is my favorite of the year so far was that it explored the intimacy of female friendships, experiences of grief in friendships. It expertly captured the nuances and intimacies and weirdnesses of living in a house share in a city. The book's Irishness plays a role in it being my favorite book of the year. And I think in terms of the writing, there were so many elements of it being incredibly specific that meant it felt really universal and like something I connected to. So that's 5 solid reasons why this is my favorite read of the year so far. The next question is your favorite sequel of the year so far. And I have a winner, but slightly by default. I have a few sequels that I read from books for work, and I don't really include those books in these kind of favorites videos. And then there were a few sequels that I read that aren't direct sequels. I read a Heartstopper novella. I read On the Come Up, which is connected to The Hate You Give. But in terms of I guess a proper sequel, but is it even a proper sequel? Is Take a Hint, Danny Brown by Talia Hibbert. But to be honest, I do feel like these books can be read in any order if you really want to. This is the second in a romance trilogy from Talia Hibbert, and in each book we are following a different sister in the Brown family, and this is Danny's story. I feel like this kind of wins by default. I did really enjoy this book, but it's not a new favorite. The next question is a new release that you want to read but haven't got to yet, and there are so many books that I could pick for this, but I am going to go with Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is a sapphic love story set against the backdrop of space missions in the 1980s, and it is by Taylor Jenkins Reid, who is one of my favorite writers of all time. So I definitely want to read this one soon. The next question is your most anticipated release for the second half of the year. There are a few books that I could go for this, but I am going to say Uncharmed by Lucy Jane Wood. I really enjoyed reading Rewitched last year, and I've also followed Lucy online for a number of years, and I just really enjoy her content, and I've really enjoyed kind of seeing her writing and publication journey unfold and all the amazing things that have happened. And I'm really excited to read Uncharmed. I feel like the aesthetic of it is something that I find really appealing, and I'm looking forward to another cozy witchy story. Question 5 is your most disappointing read of 2026 so far, and I can't lie, there have been a few duds this year. I think Paris Hilton's Memoir is probably my lowest rated book of the year, but I'm not sure I can say that was necessarily a disappointment. I was really disappointed by Hamnet, to be honest. I feel like I hummed and hawed for ages about whether Hamnet was something that I would want to read, and I'd heard so many brilliant reviews of it that I had wondered if it was a book that would really take me by surprise and I would love it, but actually I didn't like it at all. I couldn't really get into Blue Sisters as much as I thought I would, and that might actually be the one that's the biggest disappointment because I thought I would really like it. And also The Last Bookstore on Earth was a sapphic dystopian young adult book that I thought would tick all of my boxes, and I just found the writing quite juvenile even for a young adult book. Being a young adult book is not an excuse to have not great writing. I think I'm gonna say Blue Sisters because I feel like that's the one that I had the highest expectation for, so I felt the most let down by it and disappointed by it. The next question is your biggest surprise of the year, and I'm gonna go for She's Always Hungry by Eliza Clark. This is another one that you may have seen in my top 10 reads of the year video, but this is certainly the one that took me by the most significant surprise. Again, I won't go into full details of summarizing this, but I think the reasons why I'm so surprised by how much I got out of it is one, one, because it's a short story collection, two, because thematically it's kind of like grotesque and uncanny and like body horror. So I was really surprised by how much I like enjoyed this and how incredibly impressed I was by like the quality of writing and how impressive it was that the author could imagine up these really bizarre scenarios and like fully embody such kind of unusual narrators and narrative perspectives. I just was really surprised by this one. The next question is your favorite new author, and I do struggle with this question slightly, like typically year in, year out, because it's pretty rare that I will read like multiple books from the same author in like a 6-month period. There actually have been a fair few authors that I've done that with this year, but some of them were books I was reading for work, but also some of them were authors that are kind of already favorites. And whilst there are authors that I've read one book from and have really enjoyed them and like want to read more of what they're writing, I really think you do need to have read like multiple books by an author to feel like they're going to be a favorite. I feel like my answer, because of all of that, is a relatively imperfect one, but it's the one that feels right, and that is E.M. Forster. So I read Howard's End and I read A Room with a View, and we are only looking at the first 6 months of the year, but I have already now, like in July, read another E.M. Forster book. So I'm on like a little bit of a binge, and I just really enjoy his writing style, and there's something about his books that feel like I'm having a gossip. It feels a little bit like he slammed his hands down on the table and he'd be like, oh my god, the maddest shit just happened, I need to tell you. And through that there is like this reflection and analysis of like the class structures in England in the Edwardian era, and lots of things to do with like the intersection of class with gender and marriage. And I feel like a lot of the classics that I've read are from like the Regency and Victorian period, but I've not read lots of like Edwardian stuff, and I think I'm finding it really interesting just kind of comparing that to like some of the other like older texts that I've read. And I now find myself like really looking forward to reading one of his books, and I think I am kind of building up to Maurice. I think that will probably be the one that I enjoy the most, but let's see. The next question is your newest fictional crush, and people get real snobby about this question. Let me tell you, I am not a snob about this question. In fact, I would like 2 new fictional crushes from the same book, both of the female leads from Clique Q. If you've read this book, I don't feel like I need to say any more. If you haven't read this book, it's about female footballers and they kiss. The next question is a book that made you cry, and I just don't typically cry at books, but I do have an answer for this one because it was very like emotionally impactful, and that is The Places I've Cried in Public by Holly Bourne. So a very fitting title for this question. I spoke about this book at length in a recent wrap-up, so I'm not going to talk about it too much here because I don't want to try replicate, I feel like, the level of like passion I brought to reviewing this book, but it's a book that I found incredibly emotionally impactful. It is a young adult book that flicks forward and backward over like a relatively short period of time, where a teenage girl is reflecting on the emotionally abusive relationship that she had with a teenage boy. And the reason I found this one so emotionally impactful was because reading this as an adult, you can really clearly see like all of the red flags that this boy is bringing to the relationship, and you can see those traits of toxicity wearing away at our female lead. And the reason why I found this so emotionally touching was because I wish that I had read this book when I was the protagonist's age. The next question is a book that made you happy, and I'm gonna go for The Restaurant at the Edge of the World by Oliver Gerlach and Kelsey Jo Silver. So this is a like queer cozy fantasy that has like lots of food writing in it as well, and as I often have with graphic novels, this was just a really lovely like reading experience, sitting down with like a warm drink and a sweet treat and just enjoying this glorious food writing and fun. I just thought this was like just such a like really enjoyable reading experience that made me so happy. The next question is your new favorite character, and I'm gonna go for Fran from Big Day Energy. I just feel like we would be mates. Like I feel like we would move in like similar circles. I feel like if we were mates both during our like single era, it would be messy. I just want to be your friend. The next question is the most beautiful book that you have bought or received in the year so far. And I'm gonna go for Skip Shock by Caroline O'Donoghue. I just feel like the jacket design of this is so beautiful. I love the color palette. I kind of love the cityscape. I love the use of foil, especially on like the two characters at the center here. And I think it just goes to show that you can do a lot with a really like beautiful jacket design. You don't need to have like spreads on everything. And the final question is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? I mean, I'm gonna give the answer that I always give, and that's all of them. Obviously, I will read lots of books before the end of the year, but I think at the very least, all of the books that I have pre-ordered for this year, I would like to have read them within the year, because that's why I pre-ordered them, right? They were books that I clearly wanted to read like right away when they came out. But there's quite a few books on that list, so I'm not going to run through all of them. I do have a stats video coming out, so if you want even more details on how my reading year is going so far, keep your eyes peeled for that video. It will be coming soon, she says optimistically. I really hope you're having a good reading year so far. Do leave me a comment down below and let me know what the best book you've read so far this year is. And if you want to let me know you're here but you don't have anything in particular to say, leave me a clock emoji to symbolize the passage of time and that we are somehow over halfway through 2025. That is it for me today. I hope you're well, and I will speak to you in my next video.